My husband was on a video call with his girlfriend in our kitchen, showing her my wedding photo on the wall and laughing about how I looked so hopeful in it. I was standing 12 feet away, on the other side of the door he thought was locked. I need to back up. I met Garrison at a grief support group, which sounds like the setup to a bad joke, except it was the truest thing that ever happened to me. I was 31, and I just lost my mother to pancreatic cancer. 62 days from diagnosis to burial. Garrison had lost his younger brother to a car accident 18 months earlier. We sat in folding chairs in a church basement in Columbus, Ohio, drinking terrible coffee and not pretending to be okay, and that was the most intimate thing I had ever experienced with another human being. We dated for 2 years before we got married. I want you to understand what kind of marriage I thought I was building. I'm a structural engineer. I design bridges. I know how load-bearing works, how weight distributes, how something can hold for decades if the foundation is solid. I applied all of that to us. I was deliberate. I was careful. I asked the hard questions early. We talked about money, about kids, about what we'd do if one of us got sick. I thought I knew every crack in that man before I ever signed my name next to his. We got married on a Saturday in October at a small vineyard outside Columbus. 27 guests. My dress was my grandmother's, altered to fit my frame. In the photographs, I am smiling the way I had not smiled since before my mother got sick. I look, and I hate that he used this word because he wasn't wrong, hopeful. For 6 years, that photograph hung on our kitchen wall, and I thought it was a reminder of a promise. Turns out it was just decoration. The Tuesday I came home early started because of a migraine. I get them occasionally, aura first, then the pressure behind my left eye that no amount of ibuprofen fully touches. By 2 in the afternoon, I couldn't read my screen anymore, and my project manager told me to just go home. I didn't text Garrison. I didn't think I needed to. He worked from home 3 days a week. He was a freelance financial consultant. His own hours, his own schedule, complete flexibility. That flexibility had always felt like a gift. He could handle the repairman, pick up groceries, be home before me. I used to tell my coworkers how lucky I was. I pulled into the driveway at 2:47 in the afternoon. His car was there. The house was quiet from the outside. I came in through the side door off the garage, the one that connects directly to the mudroom, because the front door has a deadbolt that sticks. I set my bag down without a sound, not because I was trying to be quiet, just because I always do. That's when I heard his voice. It was a particular tone. I recognized it the way you recognize a song you haven't heard in years. Something low and warm and private that he used to use only with me. I froze in the mudroom. My first thought, genuinely, was that he was on the phone with his mother. I stood completely still and I listened. She works until 6. She has no idea. Pause. No, I'm serious. She trusts me completely. That's the thing about Nora. She thinks because she's smart, she's perceptive. My name is Nora. I moved to the door between the mudroom and the kitchen. It has a small gap at the hinge side when it's not fully latched, and I had never once in 6 years been grateful for that flaw. I was now. I could see a thin slice of the kitchen. Garrison was sitting at the island, laptop open, facing away from me. On the screen I could make out a woman, dark hair, maybe mid-30s, leaning close to her camera. She was laughing. "Show me that picture again," she said. "The wedding one." And I watched my husband rotate his laptop toward the photo on our wall, my grandmother's dress, my October smile, and he said it. "She looks so hopeful, right?" Before she figured out she'd be supporting both of us forever. The woman laughed again. She had a specific laugh, bright and a little breathless. And I know I will hear it in my worst dreams for years. I stood there for the next 22 minutes. I know it was 22 because I checked my phone at the start and then again when they said goodbye. I needed to know exactly how long it took for a marriage to finish dying. In those 22 minutes, I learned the following. Her name was Simone. She lived in Pittsburgh. They had been seeing each other for 14 months, and they were planning a trip together to Portugal in the spring. Paid for, Garrison mentioned casually, with money from what he described as Nora's work bonus she doesn't know I redirected. My year-end bonus. $11,000, already spent. I also learned that he had told her he was unhappy for basically the whole marriage, that I was cold and logical, that he'd tried, that she made him feel like a real person. I walked back to the mudroom. I sat down on the floor next to my bag. I pressed my back against the wall, and I stayed there until I heard the call end and Garrison get up and walk to the refrigerator, and I thought with the clearest part of my mind, you are a structural engineer. You know how to take something apart without it falling on you. I got up. I walked back out through the garage. I sat in my car for 40 minutes with the engine off. And I made a plan. I did not go back inside that day. I texted Garrison that I was going out for dinner with a colleague, and he sent back a thumbs-up emoji. I drove to my best friend Patrice's house, and I told her everything. Patrice is a paralegal. She did not hug me and cry. She opened her laptop and said, "Okay, how do we do this clean?" The next 3 weeks were the most controlled I have ever been in my life. I went home that night and I acted like nothing had happened. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. He talked for 20 minutes about a client, and I listened and I watched his face and I thought, I don't know you at all, but I know everything I need to. I hired a forensic accountant on Patrice's recommendation, a woman named Dr. Alicia Horn, 60 years old, gray bun, absolutely ruthless. She found not just the redirected bonus, but 18 months of financial transfers I had never been shown. A shared savings account he'd opened in his name only. Roughly $43,000, funneled in increments small enough not to trigger alerts. Money from our joint account. Money from my direct deposits. Money he'd told me had gone to estimated quarterly taxes for his business. His business that, it turned out, had billed only 4 clients in the past 2 years. His business that I had effectively been subsidizing. On a Sunday evening, 3 weeks after the day I stood in the mudroom, I set my laptop on the kitchen island. The same island he'd sat at with Simone on his screen. I opened it, and I waited for him to come in from the living room. "What's this?" he said. "Sit down, Garrison." He sat. On the screen was a document Dr. Horn had prepared, an itemized accounting of every transfer, every account, every dollar. He stared at it. I watched his face move through 4 expressions in about 8 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, and then, and this is the one I'll never forget, calculation. He was already figuring out his story. "I can explain." "Don't." My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. "I heard the call. November 18th, 2:47 p.m. You showed her my wedding photo and told her I was so hopeful." He said nothing. "You told her I was cold and logical. I want you to know you were right about that. Sit with that while you read page 2. Page 2 was from my attorney. Divorce petition, already filed, asset recovery claim attached. Given the documented financial fraud, my lawyer had advised me I had grounds to pursue full restitution of the redirected funds, and she fully expected to get them. "Nora," his voice cracked. First time I'd ever heard it do that. We can work through this. I know you believe that. That's the most interesting thing about you." I closed the laptop. "You're very good at believing what's convenient." I stood up, picked up the bag I'd packed that morning, and I walked out of our kitchen for the last time. I did not look at the wedding photo. 14 months later, the divorce was final. I recovered 38,000 of the 43. The court was satisfyingly unsympathetic to a man who couldn't explain where the money had gone. My attorney was extraordinary. Garrison had to liquidate the private savings account in full as part of the settlement. Simone, I heard through a mutual contact, ended things with him 2 months after I filed. Apparently, a broke man going through a fraud-adjacent divorce lost some of his appeal. I still live in Columbus. I still design bridges. Last spring, my firm let me lead my first major project, a pedestrian overpass across the Scioto River. When we broke ground, I stood at the edge of the site in my hard hat and my mud boots, and I thought about foundation. I thought about load-bearing. I thought about what holds. Garrison was wrong about one thing. I am logical. But I am not cold. I was just quiet. And there is a difference between a woman who feels nothing and a woman who knows exactly when to stop talking and start building. The photograph is gone. I don't need to be hopeful anymore. I know what I'm capable of.